Welcome, welcome everybody. My name is Caroline Colas and I am the Senior Director of Health and Wellness at the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan. Today on the Positive Psychology Hour, a series that we do in partnership with Whole Being Institute, which is curated by Phoebe Atkinsons, we have the pleasure of having Amanda Davidowitz back on the call. She is going to be talking to us today about the journey from Mitzrayim, exploring personal freedom with Passover as a guide. So this is such a timely topic as Passover starts for those that celebrate on Friday. So exploring personal freedom with Passover as a guide is about looking at Passover. During Passover, the Jewish people relive the story of their ancestors being liberated from slavery in Egypt. Mitzrayim, the Hebrew name for Egypt, can be translated to mean constriction or the narrow place. As free individuals in modern society, we can explore a symbolic Mitzrayim. In this presentation today, Amanda is going to invite us to explore how and where we feel constricted and to appreciate and create meaningful intentions for freedom, to expand our freedom and to really look at the freedom that we possess right now. This interactive session will incorporate some gentle yoga, meditation, journaling, and discussion. So please get a pen and a piece of paper and wear some comfortable shoes. If you have something tight and constricting on, like a jacket or anything like that, go ahead and take a moment and take that off if you'd like, or change into something more comfortable if you're at home. A little bit about Amanda. She's a perpetual spiritual seeker, yoga nerd, and self-improvement enthusiast. She loves to combine yoga, meditation, positive psychology, and other mindfulness practices with Jewish traditions in order to create new, meaningful rituals. She's a certified yoga instructor through both the Kripalu School of Yoga and Yoga for All, a graduate of Whole Being Institute's Certificate in Positive Psychology, and a positive psychology coach. You can visit her website to learn more at inspiredheartwellness.com. And I'll go ahead and put that in the chat for everyone, so you can just click on that link if you'd like. Amanda, welcome to the call. Welcome back.
Thank you, Caroline. I'm so happy to be back. This is my third presentation, so I love being here and I love to have the opportunity to be with you all. And I know you mentioned comfortable clothes. I just want to acknowledge the yoga section is going to be towards the front. It's about 10 minutes long. It's very gentle. You can do it in whatever you're wearing, in shoes or not shoes, and you don't need any props. So don't have any worries about that. So as Caroline mentioned in my introduction, I'm a yoga teacher, positive psychology coach, and also a member of the Jewish community. And one of my favorite things about Judaism is how introspective the practices can be. And I feel empowered by our tradition to find new creative approaches to Jewish holidays in order to find the most meaning in them. And so for me, that means creating new meaningful Jewish rituals by incorporating yoga, mindfulness, and positive psychology. And so I am excited to share with you today how I've been exploring the holiday of Passover and hope that it will be meaning for you all as well, whether or not you are Jewish. And as usual, as I do here, I'd like to start with giving you just a quick introduction to a few Jewish concepts for those of you who are less familiar. The Jewish or Hebrew calendar is lunar and has 12 months, and each month begins with the new moon. And Jewish months all have holidays and themes associated with them that tell the stories, histories, and traditions of the Jewish people. The themes and holidays are also very connected to nature, seasons, and farming and harvest cycles, which we were just talking about, the start of spring. And we are now, we are now in the Hebrew month of Nisan, which just began on April 2nd. And this is, timely enough, the first month of spring, and it marks new beginnings. And it's also technically the first month of the Jewish lunar calendar cycle. Although some of you may know, Jewish people do celebrate New Year in the fall with the holiday Rosh Hashanah. There are actually 4 different times throughout the Jewish calendar that can be considered the new year. which is a bit confusing and a bit more than I am going to get into today. But all you need to know is that we are in Nisan, which is the first month of the calendar, and the important and well-known holiday of Passover, or Pesach, takes place during this month and begins this Friday evening. So Passover is a celebration of freedom and tells the story of the Israelites' exodus from Egypt thousands of years ago. And the Torah tells the story of Passover in the book of Exodus. And I'm about to give you the 60-second Cliff Note version of the story of Passover I'm sure everyone's familiar, but just in case. So Pharaoh, the ruler of Egypt, has kept the Jewish people in slavery because of his concern that they will outnumber his own people. He also decrees that all Jewish male babies be killed. But one Jewish boy, Moses, is saved by Pharaoh's own daughter. And when he grows up, he's told by God to command that Pharaoh let the Jewish people go. And when Pharaoh refuses, God sends 10 plagues upon the Egyptian people. The final plague is the death of the firstborn. But Jewish people are spared by marking their doors with the blood of a sacrificed lamb, the Pesach, the lamb. This is where we get the name Passover in English, since God passed over and spared the homes of the Jews. And after the final plague, Pharaoh releases the Jewish people and they quickly escape without enough time for their bread to rise, which is where we get matzah. But Pharaoh changes his mind and chases after them to the Red Sea. God parts the sea for the Jews to cross on dry land, and the Egyptian army is drowned behind them. So as I said, that's the very Cliff Note version of the story. The Jewish people celebrate this holiday with something called a Seder, or a ritual meal that takes place on the first night or first 2 nights of Passover, and by abstaining from bread and other leavened foods for 8 days. So Jewish tradition tells us that on Passover, we are to consider ourselves as if we were personally delivered from slavery in Egypt. And the Seder ritual is rich and theatrical, using foods, songs, activities, and storytelling to help create this vivid, interactive, and hopefully meaningful experience. But for many of us living free lives in modern society, it can still be difficult to explore slavery and freedom in a way that is personally meaningful and relevant. And so my hope is that the activities that I present today will help you all to do just that. We all have ways that we feel constricted or held back, and we all have freedom that we can access through mindfulness, courage, hope, and personal agency, all attributes we think a lot about in positive psychology for those of you who've been coming to these presentations for a while. So our workshop today is going to follow the story of Passover in 3 parts. We'll begin by exploring our personal Mitzrayim, discovering the ways in which we might feel constricted, limited, or held back. Then we will explore gratitude and awareness for the ways in which we are free. And finally, begin to consider our intentions for this incredible freedom that we've been gifted. And as Caroline mentioned at the start, this is meant to be somewhat interactive. So I hope you're ready to participate, have comfortable clothes and a pen and paper for the journal exercises. And we'll get started. So we begin in Mitzrayim, which is the Hebrew name for Egypt, and is often translated as the narrow place. I know for those of you who listened to Rabbi Deborah Orenstein last week, she talked beautifully about the origins of this name and the meaning of the Hebrew word Mitzrayim. And it represents constriction, oppression, or hardship. So I'm going to begin with a brief yoga practice. And this is an opportunity to transition into your bodies and practice being mindfully present. We often carry fear, grief, and other difficult emotions in our bodies as tension. So creating space in your body through movement and breath is a beautiful first step toward opening your heart and mind and letting go of ideas or beliefs that are no longer serving you. And I'll invite you to notice and explore where you feel constriction in your body as we move together, and begin to create some of that opening or expansion. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that so you can all see me a bit better. And then we'll be doing this standing up. So if standing is not accessible for you today, that is absolutely okay. You can follow along seated in a chair. And if you are going to be seated, just see if you can scoot to the edge of your chair so that you can feel your feet on the ground if possible. And then let's see if I can move this a little bit. If you're joining me standing up, go ahead and stand with your feet about hips width distance apart, feeling nice and sturdy and anchored, the weight evenly distributed between your feet as you press down into the ground. And if it's comfortable for you, whether you're seated or standing, just take a moment to lower your gaze or close your eyes. And notice the state of your mind. Is it calm or busy? Bring attention to your breath, noticing the sensation of the air moving in and out of your nose. Noticing if your breaths are shallow or deep. And now that your attention is inward, scan your body from your head all the way down to your toes. And just notice without judgment where you feel constriction or tension. When your scan is complete, you can open your eyes. We'll begin with just a gentle neck stretch. So as you inhale, imagine the crown of your head reaching towards the ceiling. And with your exhale, release your right ear towards your right shoulder. If you like, you could extend your left arm out. Just find a place where you notice any tightness or tension on the left side of your neck. And then stay here for a few breaths, breathing into that space. And inhale your head back up to center. And as you exhale, release your left ear to your left shoulder or the opposite side. Again, maybe extend an arm, maybe look up or look down and just find that spot where you feel that stickiness or tension. Take a few breaths. And release your hand or arm and inhale your head back up to center. If you're standing, make sure that your feet are anchored into the ground, and we'll move a little bit with our breath. So with your next inhale, begin to sweep your hands and arms all the way up overhead. At the top of your inhale, reach your arms up towards the ceiling. And then with your exhale, release your hands back down to your sides. And we'll do this 2 more times. So move with your breath. Inhale starts the movement. Maybe looking up at the top. And then exhale, slowly release your hands back to your sides, and 1 more time. Nice, big, deep breath, feeling your rib cage expand. Exhaling, release. Now inhale your arms up 1 more time. And this time when you exhale, release just your right arm down to your side or place your hand on your hip and reach that left arm up and over towards the right side of the room. Feel your left foot or left hip anchoring into the floor or chair as your left fingertips reach over, opening into the left side body. And inhale, both arms back up to center. And exhale, release your left hand to your side or hip. Right arm reaches across. And if you notice your right shoulder collapsing in, see if you can just open it up a little bit towards the back of the wall behind you. Inhale your arms back up, release them down to your sides. And we'll continue some movement with breath, balloon breaths here. They're almost like cat-cows. So as you inhale, expand your arms, reach your chest through your arms. And as you exhale, tuck your chin towards your chest, round your spine, and reach your fingers forward. And this inhale, arms back, chest out, back arches, maybe look up. And exhale, round your spine, tuck your chin and reach your fingers forward. And take a few more of these at whatever pace feels good, following your breath. And at the end of your next exhale, release your hands down to your sides, then place them on your hips. Begin to take a hip circle here. And so you can make these as small or as big as you'd like. You can step your feet a little bit wider if you need the support. Just notice where there's any stickiness in your hips as you move. Maybe switch to the other side. And make your way back towards center. And inhale your arms up one more time. And as you exhale, twist to the right. So your right hand can fall down onto your low back or the chair behind you, your left hand on your right hip. Look over your right shoulder. And if your mind has wandered, come back to your breath. Notice how it feels to breathe while in this twist position. And then with your next exhale, release towards center. You can inhale your arms up and then exhale, twist to the left or to the other side, left hand behind your low back or on the chair, looking over your left shoulder. And if you're standing, see if you can keep both your hip points facing forward to help you stay in that twist. And release back to center. Now, if you're standing, stand with your feet just a little bit wider now than hip width distance apart. And if you're seated, you can open your knees nice and wide. We're taking a forward fold. So inhale your arms up overhead. And as you exhale, shift your hips back and swan dive forward. Head, neck, release. You could bend your knees as deep as you need to. Your hands can fall to the floor, to ankles, maybe grab a hold of opposite elbows. Just notice how it feels to release, to let go, to create space in your spine. With your knees a little bit bent, press your feet down into the ground to anchor you as you carefully roll all the way back up to stand, your head coming up last. When you get to the top, maybe take a little roll of your shoulders. And then with your feet still wider than hips width distance, you can point your toes just out to the sides a little bit. And then inhale and reach your arms up towards the ceiling. So you're creating the shape of a star with your body. We'll just stay here for a moment, pressing your feet into the ground, fingertips reaching up and away, noticing how it feels to expand your body as wide as possible to take up space. And then exhale, You can release your hands back down, walk your feet back together, and then just take a moment to pause. Maybe close your eyes. Do another quick scan of your body and just notice how you feel. Notice if there's been any opening or expansion in any of those places where you felt tension or constriction. Then go ahead, if you've stood up and wandered away, begin to make your way back to the Zoom. Just going to reshare my screen. Okay, welcome back. So now that you've explored Mitzrayim in your body, let's dig a little bit deeper. These questions up on the screen are ways that you might be able to continue to explore where in your life you feel constricted or limited. So I am going to pause now for about 4 minutes for some journaling time. And you can respond to whichever of these questions are speaking to you. You don't have to write about all of them. And so up on the screen, it says, in what ways am I holding myself back from being my truest, brightest, most free self? In what ways am I enslaved by my own actions, thoughts, or words? In what ways am I held back by society or by expectations placed on me by others? And in which areas do I feel silenced or disregarded? So we're going to have about 3, maybe 4 minutes of silence here to give you some time to reflect on these questions, and then we'll come back. I begin to wrap up whatever you're writing. Just a few more seconds here. Move the slide too soon. Okay, so wrap up what you're writing. And I know that this is a very personal and vulnerable topic, but if you would like to, you can share something that came up for you while responding to these prompts in the chat. Don't see any coming through, so I'm going to move to the next slide. So it can be difficult, but really powerful to name and acknowledge the ways in which you feel limited or held back. So in this next activity, I'm going to invite you to have self-compassion for the ways in which you might be limiting yourself. I believe we need to show love and compassion to even the most difficult parts of ourselves in order to grow and move forward. So according to researcher Kristen Neff, very popular in our positive psychology world, self-compassion involves 3 core components. First, self-kindness, that we be gentle and understanding with ourselves rather than harshly critical. So this is the kind and loving attitude that I'm hoping you will extend to yourself today during these exercises. Second, it requires recognition of our common humanity, feeling connected with others in the experience of life, not feeling isolated in your suffering. And I'm sure you can imagine, as everyone's exploring this topic today, that there are ways everyone feels constriction or limited, feeling limited. So you are certainly not alone. And third, mindfulness, that we hold our experience in balanced awareness. And so today, as we already started to, we're bringing some gentle awareness to our more limiting beliefs. Oh, and thank you, Michelle, so much for sharing that note there, social pressure to be thin. Yes, thank you for sharing. So this next activity comes from Rabbi Shefa Gold's book, Torah Journeys, The Inner Path to the Promised Land, which I love. And this is from her section on commentary of the Torah portion Bo, which is where we tell or begin to tell the Exodus story. So I'm going to read to you a little bit from this section here. It's up on the screen. God speaks to Moses, the prophet within us, and says, Bo, come on in. I am waiting for you inside the heart of Pharaoh. The heart of Pharaoh is inside you. It is the place that has grown heavy with the weight of life's experience. It is the place that has hardened, its outer shell cynical, and its inner layers made of fear and unhealed grief. Through this heart of Pharaoh, you must come if you are to know me, if you are to find your freedom. And she continues in the book, when Pharaoh finally lets the people go, he asks for a blessing. Perhaps we will not be entirely free until we can find the blessing for the part of us that is the tyrant, for the part of us that oppresses the spirit and has kept us in slavery, chained to a familiar constricting habit. That blessing can only come from self-compassion and self-forgiveness. So go ahead and take out your journal again. And I'm going to give you a few minutes to compose your own blessing to bless the Pharaoh within as you move toward freedom. And if you prefer not to write, you can just sit and imagine this blessing. Or if you are with someone in person, perhaps you can, talk or brainstorm together. And just imagine, what would you say to the part of you that has become hardened or cynical, the part of you that has held you back or been overly influenced by outside pressures. And then speak to this part of you with kindness and compassion. This part of you has likely been trying to protect you and keep you safe. And I will pause for about 3 minutes. Okay, so even if you're not complete, you can always return to this later. Pause, and if you've written down anything, take a moment to just read it to yourself, either out loud or in your head. And then while you're reading it, maybe gently hug yourself or place your hands on your heart. Just take a moment to feel the compassion and acceptance from the blessing. There is a traditional Passover song that is over 1,000 years old and is usually sung during the Seder called Dayenu, which roughly translates to "it would have been enough." The song has 15 stanzas, each describing one thing that God did for the Jews. For example, if he had brought us out of Egypt, and after each one we say, you can all, while muted, say in your rooms, Dayenu, it would have been enough. So this is a song about gratitude for freedom, for community, for traditions, and for the divine. And I would like to create some space for us now to begin to move out of Mitzrayim by feeling gratitude and appreciation for the many ways in which each of us experiences freedom in our lives. And you can define freedom in any way that you find tangible and meaningful for you. So I am going to guide us in a brief gratitude meditation. And you can just remain seated in your chair or move to a different position if you'd like. Just be somewhere in a position that you can find comfortable for about 4 or 5 minutes. Go ahead and get settled in. Once you feel ready, you can begin by closing your eyes or lowering your gaze. Feel your feet planted firmly on the ground and your hips supported by the chair beneath you. Relax your shoulders and lengthen your spine. Begin to pay attention again to your breath. Notice the sensation of the air moving in and out through your nose. Take about 5 breaths here, noticing how your stomach and rib cage expand as you breathe in and contract and release as you exhale. If your mind wanders, gently bring your attention back to your breath. No need for judgment. Now, begin to identify the ways in which you experience freedom in your life. Consider your mind, body, and spirit. Is there freedom in the way you pursue education, practice religion, or experience love? Freedom in your body, in the ways you think or speak, in your access to information, or how you spend your time? What else? Now, choose just one item from your exploration, one way in which you feel free, that you feel particularly grateful for. Place both of your hands over your heart and see if you can cultivate a feeling of gratitude for this particular freedom and how it has positively affected your life. Allow the sensation of gratitude to expand from your heart throughout the rest of your body. And then out loud or in your mind, say, Dainu. You can release your hands back to your lap or sides. Just take a moment to notice how you feel. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes and come back to the Zoom. As you make your way back from the meditation, go ahead and type into the chat one way that you experience freedom in your life, that you appreciate, that you are grateful for. Yes, Caroline, thank you for sharing. Excuse me, freedom for time, freedom of how you spend your time. Something else Rabbi Deborah talked about last week, but the Jews were commanded to track time with this lunar calendar during this Exodus story. And I think ownership and freedom of how we spend our time is really beautiful exploration, connected directly to our tracking the Hebrew calendar and celebrating the Passover holiday. Yeah, it's beautiful. Grateful for the means and mental ability to continue to pursue my love of learning. Some via character strengths coming in. Freedom to go where I choose. Time to go on walks. Another person mentioning how to choose to spend their own time. Yes, beautiful. Thank you all for sharing. So in the Exodus story, the Jewish people are escaping from Egypt with Pharaoh and his army at their heels when they reach the edge of the Red Sea. And people are panicked and they don't know what to do. And when Moses turns to God, and it says this in the Torah, God says, "Why are you crying out to me? Speak to the people and tell them to get moving." So in the Midrash, the Torah commentary, there is an additional story that tells how one man called Nachshon hears this, and through courage and faith alone, he wades forward, out into the sea, and that it wasn't until the water almost consumes him that the sea parts and the rest of the Israelites are able to follow behind on dry land. And I love this story as an allegory about courage and agency, that sometimes we have to be brave and step out into the unknown, take risks, and believe that we have the agency to impact our future. And those of us who've been studying positive psychology know how Dan Tomasulo, author of Learned Hopefulness, discusses in his book how high hope people are resilient, resourceful, and have a high degree of personal agency and the energy and motivation to bring about change. So freedom is a complicated concept and a word that we certainly overuse, at least I think so, in the United States. And the freedoms that we experience can be won through determination and bravery or by pure luck of circumstance. And violence and harm have been perpetrated in the name of freedom. Freedom for one person or group can be achieved by holding back or holding down another. And so with our freedom, all these freedoms that we're celebrating, also comes a certain amount of power. And I think it's important to ask, what is the purpose of our freedom? What will you do with it? Shortly after the Jewish people were released from slavery in Egypt, they were given the Torah, which is a divine guide to life filled with rules, commandments, and morals. So they, in the story in the Torah, they directed their newfound freedom toward a purpose of spirituality and community building. And in our world right now, there are many people fighting for freedom, from the war in Ukraine to here in the United States and our struggle for social and racial justice. So I think Passover is a beautiful opportunity not only to feel grateful for the freedoms that we possess, but to consider the purpose of our freedom, to consider if the ways that we express our freedom is harming others or lifting them up. I have a quote up on the screen here that says, "This is true freedom, our ability to shape reality. We have the power to initiate, create, and change reality rather than only react and survive it. How can we all educate our children to true freedom? Teach them not to look at reality as defining their acts, but to look at their acts as defining reality." I think this touches on that idea of personal agency that I was just talking about. And so for our final activity together, I'm going to pause for a few minutes and give each of you a chance to create an intention for your freedom. And I put a few prompts for you up on the screen that you can use. I'll pause for maybe just about 2 minutes since we're getting close to wrapping up here. How might you tap into your courage, agency, and hope to live more freely in your life, body, or relationships? Or how might you use your freedom to create more freedom for others? And I'll pause here for just 2 minutes. Maybe you think of one, maybe two intentions. It's about 30 more seconds. Great. Now that you've created your intention or intentions, I'll just ask you to think about, is there a person in your life that you can share this intention with? Or if you celebrate Passover, is this something that you can bring to your Seder as an activity or discussion? Just some way to make this intention real and think about how to incorporate it into your life this year. Okay, so to wrap up, there is a ritual that Jewish people do before the start of Passover, and it involves searching our houses for all the chametz, which is basically any food item or even crumb of food that is not kosher for Passover, to donate or to burn. So as we start Passover and transition, hopefully soon, into spring, I think it's a good time for a metaphorical inner spring cleaning as well, an opportunity to identify anything that is holding you back or getting in your way of your intentions and goals and stopping you from living the life that you desire. So go ahead and write into the chat, what is one thing that you can leave behind in Mitzrayim this year as you move toward freedom and growth? And in addition to sharing these with all of us here today, again, I'd like to invite you to find other ways to continue this process with friends and family, maybe even incorporating this activity into your Passover celebrations. You can actually burn your inner comments if you'd like. You can write down everything you'd like to let go of on little pieces of paper and then literally burn them in a fire, or maybe just have them be part of discussion. I'll just give you a moment in case you want to share in the chat one thing that you would like to leave behind in Mitzrayim as you move toward freedom and growth. Yes, beautiful Caroline. Being so self-critical, that's where that self-compassion comes in. I know I'd like to leave behind my trying to follow the expectations that others might have for me. Yes, release that inner Pharaoh. Oh, anger. Thank you for sharing, Rachel. So for those of you who are Jewish, I hope you have a lovely Passover. And for everyone, I wish you a beautiful spring and hope that your exploration of personal freedom will open you to many new beginnings. And as always, feel free to reach out if you have any questions or feedback from the presentation today. And I have actually, I'm trying to see if I can copy it here. I have a link, a blog post up on my website that actually outlines most of the activities that we covered today. So if you want to revisit any of these activities or share this link with friends or family as a way to find ways to explore personal freedom and preparing for Passover, that's one way you can do it. So I put that link in the chat.
We did have a question about how do you talk to teenagers at the Seder?
Oh boy. Certainly not my area of expertise. I do not have teenagers, nor do I teach teenagers. But you know, I would imagine just the same way that you would talk to adults. I mean, I think teenagers especially have emotions running high. There's a lot of being self-critical. Man, that's a big time in life where I think I was most self-critical. So I think just for me, my go-to is always to introduce self-compassion and just I like the idea of personalizing these experiences. So asking folks whether they're teenagers or any age to explore some of these questions of what freedom means for them, ways that we are feeling constricted or held back, or if you're opening your Seder to conversations of privilege and ways that you might be able to use your freedoms to expand freedoms for other. I think that these are all topics that I think many teenagers would be able to identify with. But that is a great question.
It's a great question, isn't it? And I agree. I think that, giving your cell phone a little sleeping bag and putting it in the basket is one of the surefire ways to actually be able to have a conversation with a teen.
Thank you for that. Yes,
Let's
and I love how Deirdre just said teens understand the need for freedom.
Yeah,
I love
exactly.
That. It's so true.
Yeah.
Yes, they're exploring freedom for the first time.
Right, and so many of them are doing, especially depending on if they're preparing for bar and bat mitzvahs, they're doing acts of service. So talking about a better world and how they feel about the world and how they feel about freedom around the world is it's just an amazing time to hear what they have to say if we can get them talking. I love listening to them when I can get them talking. I don't know about you, Amanda. I just wanted to remind everybody that we're actually going to be taking a break from the Positive Psychology Hour in honor of Passover. So there will not be a session on Friday or next week, but we will see you back in the house, so to speak, on Tuesday, the 26th, and also on the 28th. And just may this be a time of rest, restoration, and renewal. And thank you, Amanda, for setting it up so beautifully for us.
Thanks,
I know I have
Caroline.
my little prayer and mantra, and it's involves a lot about slowing down. Anybody else? And
Oh
taking some
yeah.
time. Yeah. And
Yep.
it's the acts of service, serving many even outside of the Jewish community. Yes, Deirdre, absolutely. Great prompts, Amanda. Thank you,
Thanks,
says Rachel.
Rachel.
And thank you for the printout information. I will incorporate into my Seder, Susan says. Well, Amanda, any final thoughts as you prepare for your own journey inward,
Oh, I think you're right. It's
blending?
just slowing down and taking the time. I know I presented this today. I need to find a little time to just do some of this work myself. And um, yeah, I think sometimes we go through the motions with the Passover Seder, the same things every year. And I think it can be important to take a pause and use it as some time for personal reflection as well. And I think recommitting to your intentions and how you want to live your life. I think these rituals are a beautiful opportunity to connect with our traditions and history and family, but also with ourselves to find personal meaning through these practices. So that's my wish for you all for this
Yeah.
Passover.
And for me, everyone, I hope that you do what Kathy Washburn, who has been a guest on our show,
Mhm.
talks about in terms of savoring. Sense drench. Take a moment, 90 seconds, as she says, to just feel, to look at the flowers, to feel what freedom feels like in your body, and
Yeah.
fill up in that feeling and savor it. And we'll see you in a week and a half. Happy Passover, happy Easter for those that celebrate Easter or whatever holiday. We're also in the time of Ramadan. Um, may you feel blessed and held by those that you love and who love you, and certainly by us at Whole Being and the JCC. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.